Hi, welcome to Week in Review, where we catch up on some of the headlines making news. I'm joined today in our downtown studios by Watchdog reporter Nolan Clay and my old friend, business editor Don McCoy. A lot of news this week. Let's get right to it. Nolan, we had a ruling this week in the tragic case of former Labor Commissioner Mark Costello. What's the latest?
Well, his son, Christian, a trial's been set because he has achieved mental competency, which means he can assist his attorneys and help them in their trial. His attorneys are going to use an insanity defense. These attorneys do not dispute that he killed his father, said it's on video camera. So the question would be, was he insane at the time? He didn't know right from wrong and should go to a mental hospital rather than prison.
It's a little tricky. People see that and they say, okay, wait, he's been deemed mentally competent, and yet, you look at that crime and it's like, well, obviously he's not mentally competent. Explain sort of the differentiation there in the legal process. He's been deemed capable essentially of assisting in his defense. Is that right?
Well, yes. I mean, basically, he seems to be better when he's on his medication. So
and he suffers from schizophrenia, right?
The diagnosis technically is schizoaffective disorder.
Okay.
And that's the latest diagnosis. So he can assist his attorneys because he's on medication. There for a while he was off his medication, and he was found to be not competent by an expert. And he went to Veneta, the state facility there, and was treated and is on medication, including an antipsychotic. And he's achieved competency now. And competency and insanity, the point is very different. Insanity is you don't know right from wrong at the time of the offense. And somebody can be insane, but competent after they get on medication to assist their attorney. So mental competency and mental insanity are two different things.
And if I remember right, the judge in this case was the one who asked for another mental evaluation after some comments that Christian made in a court appearance, right?
Yes, yes.
What was it he exactly asked the judge? Or
well, he talked about he wanted to plead guilty, and he wanted to go to prison in Minnesota, and because he wanted to be a Freemason, and I mean, he still rambles on a little bit. The latest report said that he was asked about delusions from his previous evaluation, including him being a Mason, and that he previously believed that he was God. And the report says he told me he no longer believed either of those things. But the doctor said that he still has issues, and including delusions about the military for some reason. But those symptoms have significantly diminished from the previous evaluation.
Just a tragic case all the way around, no doubt about it. And then we also had a ruling this week in another highly controversial case. Joe Mixon, the OU running back, accused of punching a co-ed at a Mormon sandwich shop.
You say accused, but I mean, he did it. And it's on surveillance video, which sports media got to see. And he's been adjudicated criminally on that. And he was on probation, didn't get a conviction, and had to do some community service and some other things. And he's done with that. OU suspended him for a season, and he's done with that. But now the woman who was punched, who also is an OU student, has sued him, and she sued him in California, in federal court in California, saying he's from California, and she wanted the trial there because she said she couldn't get a fair trial here in Oklahoma because she worried that so many jurors would be OU fans. And Mixon argued to have the trial here in Oklahoma City, saying it's silly to have it out there, it's too far away. His attorneys would have to travel, and witnesses would have to travel, and a federal judge in San Francisco agreed that the trial should be moved to Oklahoma City, and the young woman's attorneys are not contesting that any further, and so it's going to come to Oklahoma City.
And I think the interesting thing in that was it was the lawyer, I believe, that said, well, it's possible that they also might have some OSU folks that would hear that and might be inclined to go the other way, which I
Well,
thought, does the rivalry really go that far?
Well, that's part of his argument. That was part of the argument that they made to say, hey, it's the claim that you'd get an unfair jury, a biased jury, is not true, because you could get OSU fans, you could get people who don't know anything about football. So the federal judge in San Francisco said, okay, we're kicking it out of here and moving it back to Oklahoma City.
And this is a civil case, right? She's seeking essentially damages for her injuries.
She's seeking damages. Now, the question might arise, well, I mean, most 20-year-olds, which is how don't have much money, and Joe Mixon doesn't have much money at this point, but there's a good chance he'll go pro someday, and then they'll have some money that they could collect from him.
And there have been questions that have been raised in the past of who is paying Joe Mixon's attorneys, right? There was questions about whether OU was doing that.
I had a story, and that was raised by some people thinking, OU. I mean, OU's not being sued, and OU's not, and it wasn't even on campus. It was off campus, campus corner, and OU could not pay for his attorneys. It would be a benefit and against NCAA rules, and his attorneys have confirmed that OU's not paying for his legal fees. They didn't go any further than that. I imagine there's some kind of arrangement with the young man that he'll pay for it if he goes pro at some point, or there's a loan by his parents or some other arrangement.
Has a court date been set yet?
On the Mixon matter, no. On the Costello matter, trial's been set for April.
We'll be keeping an eye on that. Don, business this week. What's going on? What's the latest?
Well, we had a story in this morning's paper about a case that has been running for quite some time. Some landowners, residents west of the metro had filed a suit because they were trying to block a major wind farm out there, and they were claiming that this was going to spoil their way of life, that there was issues with these giant turbines that they cause flicker when the sun is in certain parts of the sky on sunny days, that there are these low frequency sound emissions that are damaging to your health. And they filed this suit it was a nuisance lawsuit trying to get this blocked before this Kingfisher wind farm, which it's in Kingfisher and Canadian counties, was being constructed. Well, as the case has wound its way through the courts, that wind farm is completely constructed now. There's I think about 150 turbines out there. But yesterday, a federal judge dismissed their case against the wind farm. He said they just couldn't show that these things were happening in a way that would allow their case to move forward. And it's an interesting case because there are groups of people that really dislike wind farms, and a lot of people who live near wind farms will tell you it's a problem. It's an issue.
And we're seeing lawsuits across the country in a similar vein. People claiming essentially physical injury from these things, that it nausea, literally making them sick.
Well, and this group is affiliated with a group that actually filmed a video that I saw on the internet where it showed, for instance, at night, all of these turbines are so high they have to have lights on top of them so that airplanes don't run into them. And these people who live in the middle of very rural places, very isolated, suddenly their surroundings are lit up every night with these lights, red lights that all flash simultaneously. And you can see hundreds of these lights from some of these people's houses who previously didn't even have a neighbor, within a mile or two. We also saw a video of what the flicker effect looks like now. That's just certain times of the day. It depends if the sun has to hit the turbine just right, but the whole house, it looks like somebody in your house is flicking all the lights on and off because these blades, the shadows from these blades hit your house, and I could see that would be very annoying. There's questions about this what they call infrasound, these low frequency sounds that you can't even hear that come from these turbines that some people claim is damaging to your health. But I mean, this is a $450 million project, and it's done now. And with this case dismissed by the federal judge, it will continue to operate. It's already delivering power. Now, it doesn't deliver power to anybody in the state of Oklahoma. This This power has been bought by, I think, Morgan Stanley, and it's sold to a utility. I want to say it's in Georgia or someplace. So the wind power is being created here, and then that electricity is being delivered elsewhere, which some people have an issue with as well, but is not really relevant to the lawsuit that was going on.
Is the expectation that we're going to continue to see the growth of wind farms in Oklahoma?
Oh yeah, Oklahoma has kind of been moving up. We're among the top states in producing wind power. Texas produces a lot, Iowa has a lot, but Oklahoma's right up there among the top states that produce wind power.
Interesting. Then we also had a story about some property on the east side, not far from the Capitol.
That's coming up this weekend. In our Sunday paper, Steve Lackmeyer, who wrote recently about a development at Northeast 23rd and Martin Luther King, where a grocery store has gone in, and there were, which was a good thing, because that is actually, the USDA considers that part of Oklahoma City to be a food desert, which means it's tough for people to find groceries, basically. They have to travel to get to a store where they can buy fresh produce and fresh dairy products, those kinds of things. So the Buy for Less people bought a property there, they opened a grocery store there, and they managed to get the city to approve some funding to help them develop that. And what they had promised was one of their upscale grocery stores, the Uptown Market. In the interim, as they've run into some developmental problems, that has kind of been downscaled, and now it's one of their discount chains. I think it's called Super Saver, which upset the local councilman, and he's wanting that whole thing. He wants to get in there and get a better grocery store for the northeast side. But what also is going on at the same time, and what Steve is focusing on, is that you have some properties right in that area that are neglected. Some of them have essentially been abandoned, and it's really mucking up the neighborhood, and it doesn't make it an attractive place for people to come in from outside who might want to develop some sort of retail or commercial venture in that area. So the city is considering doing eminent domain to take over some of these properties that the owners are not taking care of. And some of these places are, Steve demonstrates in his stories, are targets of crime. There's a lot of crime that goes on in these areas. One of these former businesses, it actually burned down, and it's just been sitting there untouched for years. So they want to clean up the area. They want to encourage development. They're pumping money into that area to try and make that happen. And it makes a lot of sense. That area has been run down. It's really close to downtown. It's a mile east of our state capitol, and a lot of people live in that area. And as the downtown area keeps getting more and more developed and more shiny, that kind of development should spread. It's been spreading west. It should spread east.
And you see it with the district over by the hospital, and
Sure.
You see a lot of development at the GE Center and some of those things that are going in on that side. And yet, yeah, as you mentioned, there are some really blighted neighborhoods and areas over there that continue to struggle.
And the city wants to do something about that. It's clear that they want to help make that happen, and that's what Steve's writing about.
So these are the kinds of stories that you can read in the Oklahoman, that you can find on News OK. I can't let you guys go without asking. I'm outnumbered here with two OU fans in the room, but predictions on tomorrow's game against my Wildcats. I'm going to go with the Wildcats. I know it's 3 times in a row in Norman would be a bit of a stretch probably to hope for, but I'm not even going to ask you. I know who you're cheering for. Never mind.
It's nice to kind of get a week off after the tough schedule that we've been having early in the season.
Okay, and on that note, my friend Don, who may not be back here next week, we will go ahead and say so long from the downtown studios of the Oklahoman. See you next week.